polls battle for the states. We've looked at 3 of the 5 states. Let's turn our attention now to Chhattisgarh. This is another state which the exit polls by and large seem to indicate is going to go towards the Congress party. But the last I saw, not necessarily as big as 2018. As big a margin as, yeah. So if you look at Chhattisgarh, and we've got the individual exit polls out, Dainik Bhaskar saying 35-45 to the BJP, 46-55 to the Congress party. Remember, the majority mark is 46. That's the magic number they're chasing. So a simple majority, Dainik Bhaskar says, for the Congress party, BJP very close at their upper band over there. India Today says BJP 36-46, Congress 40-50. So again, the Congress somewhat ahead, not by a very large amount according to India Today. Access My India. The next one that we have is India TV CNX says that the BJP at 30-40, the Congress at 46-56.
And it's fascinating,
Jan Ki Baat has the Congress at 42-53.
Yes, because in the state of Chhattisgarh, it was all completely an election of Bhupesh Baghel. Either the party was anti-Bhupesh Baghel or for Bhupesh Baghel. Because if you look at these numbers, yes, it may not be a landslide that we saw in 2018 of 68 seats which the Congress managed to win. But Bhupesh Baghel has managed to consolidate his position, and Nalin, that should be a massive concern for you. When it is vocal for local, if the Congress has managed to localize elections and focus and project a local leader, they can win elections. And Chhattisgarh will be an example in that if these numbers hold on third.
You know, what we've got is this a poll of polls. We've taken the average of exit polls for 3 states. Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and Rajasthan. We'll include the other states as we get to them later on. So if you look at Madhya Pradesh, it's the BJP okay, so you've got the Congress at 130. The number for the BJP we'll try and figure out over there as well. The majority mark is 116. So we'll just try and figure that out. That's slightly unclear.
Yes.
We'll try and
yes.
We'll just
let's
figure
go
that
to
out.
Nalin and get an answer to that.
The number for the
yes.
BJP is the BJP,
yes.
As far as that graphic is concerned.
Yes,
so we'll get that fixed in
yes.
just a moment. But let me go across to Nalin Kohli. Nalin, let's look at Chhattisgarh now. The BJP had huge expectations, but I mean, it's an interesting game or political game that Bhupesh Baghel has played. The fact that he's made Hindutva, for example, one of his core agendas. Do you believe that that's something that may work in the Congress's favor?
So, 3 comments on Chhattisgarh. The first is the spectacular manner in which the BJP has come up from its last election. Let's not forget, Chhattisgarh was one of our biggest blows in terms of coming down in a house to about 15 seats with effect. And you understand it in a democracy, 15 seats out of 90 means virtually of really not much voice even in the house. But each one of the polls that I've checked is showing the BJP crossing at least doubling, at the very least crossing the double mark figure, which means going up to 30, 35, even 40. So that's good news. Now, how far that would pull itself, would it reach the halfway mark or not, we'll know only on the 3rd. But there is spectacular growth. So we have overcome that bad loss that we had 5 years ago. Second, if Mr. Baghel is switching to, as you say, Hindutva, or picking up Hindu-related politics in that sense, that's good. At least if the Congress remembers God in times of need, at least they are remembering God, so we should be happy about that.
Okay.
I don't think we have a cause of complaint on that.
Just get Amitabh
the third one, my third comment,
yes,
quick one third quick comment, is that I think Chhattisgarh's problems are really now again going to be worse than what Rajasthan has seen. We had the big hugs, everything between Mr. Singh Deo and Mr. Bhupesh Baghel. And a few days ago, we've had Mr. Rahul Gandhi sort of bless Mr. Singh Deo in a rally. Now, if that's inadvertent,
so a leadership problem potentially for the Congress is what?
And the third,
yes.
And the third is Mr. Singh Deo himself has said that the leadership issue is open.
All right.
So I think Chhattisgarh is doing well for us in terms of how we've come out of where we were.
Amitabh, would you like to respond to that? A potential leadership problem for the Congress party, even if you end up winning in Chhattisgarh?
I don't think so. I think it's very clear, especially in the last few months, that Mr. Baghel and Mr. Singhdev have worked together. We've had a very coherent campaign, a very coordinated campaign. There's been no dissension, despite efforts of people to find evidence of such a thing. I think what the results show, to some extent, assuming they follow this pattern, is a normalization of Chhattisgarh. We had a very big victory in 2018. It was an unusually big sweep. And after 5 years in government, we still are going to be coming back if these polls are correct. So I think that's pretty creditable. There's nothing to be overly concerned about. The Chhattisgarh government has a strong track record of supporting the farmers, having direct payments to many segments to stave off the kind of economic distress that they felt in neighboring Madhya Pradesh, for instance, and in many other states. So I think there's been a credible face. There's been a credible set of policies, and that's reflected in these results.
And would
it's
you
to some
also
extent
say,
a normalization of politics.
Yes. Shankar Iyer, will the state of Chhattisgarh send a larger message on the tribal votes?
Pankha chala
Well, you know, there's a much larger message that is coming to my mind if you look at all the exit polls. And that is, and this we discussed when the opinion polls was done by Sanjay also. CSDS poll shows this. The larger message is that every opinion poll across various media platforms highlights two issues in the political economy. One of unemployment, and then the attendant issue of inflation and price rise as well. Now, if you look at the trends from the exit polls, state governments which have done decently in transmitting welfare seem to be doing okay. In fact, much of the election campaign, particularly in Madhya Pradesh and in Chhattisgarh and Rajasthan, has been less of a contest of ideas or anything, more a contest of the schemes. Mm-hmm. What is the message that Chhattisgarh is sending out? To me, it's the complete acceptance that that agriculture, the viability of agriculture is affected, and this can be seen in another way also, is in the doubling of the sort of what I call the state government topping up the central government PM Kisan scheme from 6,000 to 12,000 rupees. Maharashtra has launched the Namo scheme to top up welfare for farmers. Chhattisgarh the Congress has ramped up minimum support price for paddy. Now, if this is going to be the trend, it's a kind of worrisome figure, because now this is in a sense that in a time when you're struggling to deal with inflation, if you're going to sort of pop up. What's even more interesting is that the BJP has also promised that we will improve MSP prices, MSP in the center. A lot of schemes that are announced in state elections get transferred to the central election.
That's
if
right.
you remember, in 2018, Raitu Bandhu was launched, and
Yes.
Odisha had another scheme.
So Shankar, I'm just trying to keep the strike rotating. I take your point.
Yeah.
I wanted to get Amitabh on that. Amitabh, the point that Shankar is saying is that, you've got all of these schemes that you're announcing. It has an economic toll. It's one thing to win elections, but then somebody has to pay for it. And it could come, it could be detrimental to the Congress party, for example, if you came to power in Chhattisgarh. So elections were election promises versus economic reality. How would you tackle that?
So there are 2 points I'd like to make. One is that there's been an increase in demands for this kind of what people call populism, what the Prime Minister has called bravery, even though his party has done similar things. And the reason these demands have come up is because the central government's policies have all been directed towards the supply side and not enough of demand side stimulation. And this has been felt by constituencies across the board: farmers, women, students, unemployed, and so on. So the government believes that giving tax cuts to big business is more important than, say, doing a Nyaya type of a scheme for the poor. So this is a philosophical difference we have with the BJP. And the reason that there are these demands, and state governments, not just Congress governments, but particularly the Congress governments, have stepped up with these policies is because of this gap. That said, of course, it's the job of a government to budget for its policies. And whether it's Karnataka or Chhattisgarh, if you look at the last 2-3 years, the budget deficits have been quite reasonable and manageable. So if a government decides that its policy priorities are welfare and it's able to find the funds for them, I don't see why that's a problem. That's a political debate, perhaps, but it's not an economic issue as long as you're actually finding the money and the resources.
Nalin wanted to
for your
reply to
schemes.
that. Nalin, go ahead.
So, first of all, that's the Congress party's perspective. Ours is a little different. If the Congress had really gone into governance in a serious manner, looking at the bottom chunk of the Indian population, you wouldn't need acronyms like NYAI today. You wouldn't have. I mean, and I can give you 2 examples straight away. The nationalizations of banks took place under Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in the 1970s, 71 if I recall. And the idea was that you'll have more bank accounts for the poor. They didn't open. But yet, under Modi, you could have 45 crore bank accounts opened in a period of 3 years. Today, it forms an extremely credible and important part of delivery in terms of financial delivery to women to a large extent. A lot of fun was poked at us that, these are zero balance accounts, etc. Today, they are not zero balance accounts. Another example is, say, electricity. That even after 70 years, you still had 18,000 villages without electricity. So these are Garibi Hatao. That was the famous slogan which brought Mrs. Gandhi back in 1971. So therefore, the Congress party has a perspective to this. And the freebie versus Revdi is very simple. Is that you deliver to the last mile, but you also plan that you can deliver it and continue to deliver it. Take 80 crore people getting free ration, now announced for the next 5 years with a plan of 11 lakh crores. There's a plan to it. It's not just an announcement. Because when it's only an announcement, then you are caught on camera, like we saw in Karnataka, telling the MLAs, the Congress MLAs being told by their leaders in Karnataka, hang on, we don't have funds for development now because we need, we made these promises, we need to implement it first. So there's a difference between planning it out and doing it in that manner and just announcing it. So if your pockets
I have to
are
respond to
planned
that.
for, you can spend.
But the good news is that in these elections, the focus was on welfareism. One party is welfareism, another party is Revdi. That's understood. But all parties were talking about guarantees, were talking about benefits for the poor. Let me start wrapping up this conversation, Vishnu. And I want to understand from all of you, when we look at these big numbers which have started coming in, so NDTV poll of polls suggesting that in the state of Madhya Pradesh, remember it's a 230-member assembly, the majority is 116, the BJP is likely to win somewhere around 124, the Congress could be around 102. Looking at Chhattisgarh, a 90-member assembly, the majority number is 46. The Congress is winning the state is what the numbers are suggesting. In Rajasthan, it is the BJP which is likely to come to power. Looking at Telangana now, and if we were to look at the big numbers in Telangana, it's very, very clear that it is very, very much the Congress which is ready to spring a surprise. But looking at the big numbers, and I'm going to ask to all the studio guests who are present here, this isn't really a semi-finals for 2024. That's almost all of you would agree with that. But what is the big message that will come on third? And when you look at these exit poll numbers, what is it that you'll be watching out for when the numbers start coming on third?
I think 2 weeks back, our World Cricket Tournament showed us that no semi-final is a predictor of the final. And I think that will also be the case on December 3rd. What is the big message for me in this election? There are 2 types of contests. In a direct BJP Congress contest like in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, there is a close fight. And where you have a state-based party fighting against a national party like in Telangana, you see the ruling party facing a challenge. So I think for me the big message in this election is state elections are driven by local factors. In state elections, local leadership is important in significant ways. Chhattisgarh shows this, and it continues to show the Karnataka trend.
But there is also an example of Madhya Pradesh.
Yeah, of course, and that's why it is so close. And I wouldn't want to hazard any guess on Madhya Pradesh until
So you
December
are not
3rd.
going with the outliers there.
No, I'm saying
There are three
for me, Rajasthan
pollsters.
and Madhya Pradesh are still very close.
You know, I just
Both
wanted
of
to
them
talk
are
a
tight
little
races
bit
for me.
about outliers. If we look at that poll of polls, and Smita, come in on this, you know, the numbers in the poll of polls actually includes the outliers as part of the average which has actually taken place. Now, in the case of Rajasthan, there were huge outliers. There were a few in Madhya Pradesh as well, which were outliers. So whether this poll of polls is necessarily an accurate representation of what people are thinking, in the presence of outliers, I would suggest perhaps it's not.
Yeah,
It would be if you remove the outliers, right?
Yeah,
It would be much, much closer than that.
much closer. Absolutely.
In fact, too close to call, perhaps.
Yeah, so it is probably, I mean, that's why I think the figures are so close for both Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. I think both have put their best, both parties have put their best foot forward, because for both parties, and you know, these elections are important, not necessarily because they'll reflect what will happen in 2024, but you have to send out a signal to your party workers.
And to
You
your
have to
alliance
send out to your
partners.
alliance partners that, you know, we are still in the game. So for the Congress party, for instance, if it wants really to lead this India alliance, if it cannot send a message out, you know, regardless of whether
In a
this can be
direct
replicated.
contest, and there are good 250 seats all across India, correct me, Professor Shastri, where it's going to be a BJP versus Congress contest in terms of the Lok Sabha numbers. So this is crucial. 3rd December is crucial, particularly for the Congress, because whether they will lead the opposition will be decided that day.
Yeah.
But again, Maria, I would offer a caveat there.
Yes.
State polls have taken a total different trajectory as compared to national polls. So even if a particular result is seen in a bipolar contest in a state, local issues dominate. Next year, it's going to be a totally different set of factors which will define and decide how the voter looks at it.
Yeah.
Maria, can I just
Yes,
respond to that? I agree with what he is saying, and that's exactly what I said, that, you know, this will not, does not, if they win now, say the Congress wins 3 states now, it doesn't mean that it will do equally well there, but it will create the mood among party
it'll
workers.
get a better
and
bargaining power.
with the allies.
Yes.
That is what I meant.
See, the main thing is imagery. If the Congress loses 2 of the big states, which it held last time, definitely it will give conjecture, you know, that Congress is not able to cope with it.
Right.
And the regional parties can cope with it and other things. And the most simple point is, you'll notice in all these states, leaders of 40 years, 45 years experience are still dominating.
You have made an interesting point, because if dyed-in-the-wool Congress leaders, be it Mr. Kamal Nath or Mr. Ashok Gehlot, were not ready to give space to a younger leader, which we saw a generational shift play out in Revant Reddy, 54-year-old emerging
Mr.
as
Baghel
a surprise
himself is
factor.
35 years. Mr. Baghel himself is also not a
Very young.
spring chicken.
You know what I'd like to do at this stage is turn our attention to the final state that we need to look at very closely, the state of Mizoram. It is absolutely fascinating in terms of how politics within Mizoram has actually changed over a period of time. You've got 40 seats over there, 21 the magic mark, 14 to the MNF. The MNF is, with the BJP in an alliance. The alliance is called NEDA, the Northeastern Development Alliance. The ZPM, some would suggest, the ZPM is today what the Congress was in the state earlier on. Would you, Sanjay, like to come in on, the Mizoram point? One would have thought that given the situation in Manipur and the fact that it created real ripples across the region, you would have seen some sort of clear impact. But the fact is that the MNF, which is an alliance with the BJP, still seems to be relatively strong.
It was in alliance. I think it was Mizoram's result last time which created ripples and a whole lot of changes in terms of the talk about Northeast, how BJP manages elections, post-election information of government had started. I think they got 1 seat and they're part of the government. They became part of the government. Mizoram, of course, is interesting. A new party has also come in there. Northeast, in fact, has come into great deal of prominence than it was. That is to the credit of BJP, the way they campaign, plus the focus they have given to the Northeast. The thing that we're talking about, these 4 state assembly election, besides Mizoram, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, BJP and Congress are head to head. There is no third party per se involved in these elections. What is more interesting that some time ago, you generally tend to give 2 to 1 or almost 3 to the Congress. When Ashok Gehlot was talking all about his welfare scheme and so on and so forth, BJP putting in some central leaders out there, Vasundhara Raje not in picture till then. And from there on to these elections, whereby some exit polls predicting a landslide in Madhya Pradesh, that if that happens, that's a huge, huge story. In Rajasthan, incidentally, Congress in last 25 years has not won a majority. So therefore, the numbers, the higher
I'm
mark,
just interrupting
they've
you
got
because
96 and 100.
I do
Ashok
want to
Gehlot
focus a little bit on Mizoram. I wanted to go back to Amitabh. Amitabh, one of the key problems in Mizoram for your party, some would suggest, is the lack of a prominent face. You've had Lal Thanwala being a really prominent leader in the past. Do you believe that the loss of a dominant face in Mizo politics for the Congress is hitting you now?
I think the situation is complicated by the emergence of a new force. Now, we don't know how this election is going to pan out. So I think there is a three-way division of votes there. And how it all adds up is a bit unpredictable. So I would hold judgment for now. Just to say that it's a more complex situation in Mizoram in the purely the electoral sense. I wouldn't want to rush to judgment in this kind of a complicated scenario with so many moving parts.
Smita, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment on Mizoram also. I think this new party, the ZPF, which is a collection of smaller parties which came together. I mean, it's remarkable the way it has performed according to these exit polls, if that is correct. I think it's a commentary on what people in the Northeast feel about what's happening in Manipur and the way the centre has treated Manipur. Because the normal thing
I wouldn't
in the
agree with that.
Northeast,
I'd like a comment.
the normal thing in the Northeast is that people go for the party which is allied to the central party.
Just
and this is not happening.
Reply to that, and I'll come to you next.
Mizoram, prior to election, MNF was not, Lal Denga's parties was not part of.
Okay, go ahead. A small point.
Yes, please.
Let's remember the ZPM in the last assembly elections emerged as the largest largest opposition. Its leadership is basically an old congressman.
Right.
And it
so
replaced
the
the Congress
of
in important
past,
ways.
which is the
and
ZPM of
in
today.
a sense is a replacement of the Congress in terms of the party structure. And the ZPM has already positioned itself as the opponent to the MNF in the last election, and this is just an expansion of that trend that is happening.
Nalin, go ahead.
So, Mizoram, you'll permit me to draw a little bit on personal space beyond even my political space, because, my dad's been governor there and I've been in charge of Mizoram in 2012. And I don't think, and I've been in charge of 4 states now for the party, Mizoram, Manipur, Meghalaya, and of late, Nagaland. So I think I would not agree with Smita's, assessment and linking it to the Manipur issue in terms of politics. In Mizoram, it has a lot to do with also the border with Myanmar and the Chins who are moving in there, who effectively get linked to other tribal affiliations. So that's a little more complex. The politics of Mizoram is what just now was pointed out, is that the ZPM has been growing at the Congress's cost. And basically the ZPM has been around for a long time, Lal Duama. And Lal Duama has been persistently building it up. And I think what you are really finding at the end of it is Lal Duama being rewarded that persistence which the Congress lost after Lal Thanwala. There was no charismatic leader. So it was really the MNF and the Congress. From a bi-party, it has become multi-party. The BJP opened its account in the last election, even though it was in the Chakma areas. And Mizoram is a tough area to break into for the BJP. And therefore, we believe that we may also have more than one seat, as I've been told by the party. So I won't take it in the binary of Manipur. Mizoram is far more than that.
What about NEDA, the fact that you have tried to form a grand alliance of like-minded parties? How does that apply over here right now? What is the association
NEDA
with
is not
the
a political alliance. No, it's not. As Dr. Hemanta Biswa Sarma has repeatedly said, NEDA is not a political alliance. NEDA is a development alliance. Take the case of Meghalaya. In the last election also, and even this one, Conrad Sangma's party and the BJP have not contested together.
Or will you
but
say
we are
that
together
whatever be the results on
part
third,
of NDA
it will
also.
be a BJP as government finally, which will happen, which will be formed in Mizoram. Finally, an alliance government.
An NDA government.
An NDA government.
Well, we'll have to wait to see how the result is. I'm not going to make that comment yet because it really depends on how this opens up. How far does the MNF go? How far does Lal Duama go? How many seats the BJP gets and how many seats, more importantly, in this case, the Congress.
But Nalin,
Because
you
the
would
Congress
agree that
is
there
a
are
factor
issues that the
these rounds.
MNF has, serious problems with the BJP on. For example, the issue of a uniform civil code. That is an issue that, there are differences and strong political differences. The issue of them
But in the
refusing to
uniform
conduct
civil code
biometric
issue again.
identification. So I'm just trying to understand that, if you talk about a potential alliance, there are ideological issues, and even if not ideological, the thematic difference is very strong one.
So let's go back. So let me ask you the question in a different way. You've had a lot of immigration from Bangladesh into multiple states. Why not in Mizoram? So I mean, it's far more complex. That's the point I'm trying to make out. It's not the binary. To make the mistake in the Northeast is to constantly pick up one state and look at the model in the other. Each state has its very, very different, not just tribal or regional, but even political compulsions. And with regard to the BJP and the MNF, I think the MNF's position was, and that's my reading, a complete build-up for somehow trying to take a strong line view to ward off Lal Duama's party.
Right.
Otherwise, till almost the election, we were together.
All right. Well, look, we've run out of time on this program. It's been truly spectacular in terms of what these exit polls have suggested. It's going to be quite close in a couple of states, but it's going to all boil down to what happens on Sunday.
Yes, and this will be your election news destination. Vishnu and I will be back early morning on Sunday to get you all the reports from every counting center, Vishnu.
1 p.m. it'll all be out, right?
Yeah.
By 1 p.m. or so, electronic voting machines, the most unbelievable technology we use in our elections. By 1 p.m. we'll know who's going to be in power, hopefully.
And
in
we hope
5
that there
states.
is no cliffhanger.
There will be a cliffhanger. I think we can count on that. Which
We know the results, but in some states we may not know who will be in power.
or who's going to be chief minister
Chhattisgarh
all
could,
the time.
could go to the wire till
will be a
evening.
cliffhanger.
All
You are
right.
saying Chhattisgarh will be a cliffhanger. Okay, so we will be holding all our panelists accountable that day, Vishnu.
From Maria, me and the entire NDTV team and indeed our guests over here. Good night. Goodbye.